If you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or you just want to mind control people into doing whatever you want, you need to sprint to Amazon right now and buy the book Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. There's a reason why every successful entrepreneur has this book on their bookshelf, because the 7 psychological principles taught in this book are so powerful they should be banned. These 7 principles have been responsible for me making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's easily the best book ever written about influence. And I have to warn you though, if you watch until the end of this video, you'll become so persuasive, influential, and learn how to mind control people into doing whatever you want so easily that it'll feel illegal. And in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how these 7 unethical tricks work, how to use them for yourself so you don't have to read the book, then show you how top marketers like Sabri Subi, Russell Brunson, and even the government use these tricks on you every day without you even realizing. What if I told you there's a psychological hack so powerful it's hardwired into our very nature, and there's nothing you can do to resist it? This actually happened to me recently. So we all have one of those neighbors that gives gifts to the rest of the neighborhood, right? Well, last week my neighbor, let's call her Sarah, dropped off a batch of her famous blueberry muffins at my house. It was a sunny Tuesday afternoon, and there she was, stood at my doorstep smiling and holding a plate full of carb-filled deliciousness. But here's the thing, I started feeling really uncomfortable after she gave me the muffins. Not because I don't like muffins, I mean, what kind of crazy person doesn't love a good muffin? But Sarah had given me something and I hadn't given anything in return. It felt like there was an imbalance, a sort of invisible pressure to return the favor. So here's what happened next. Sarah mentioned that she was thinking about starting a business to sell her muffins and knew that I had some marketing skills. So I felt compelled by the need to reciprocate her kindness that I offered to help her with her strategy. Fast forward a few weeks and Sarah's muffin business is off to a great start thanks to a little help from me. And that's when I realized even an experienced marketer understands what's going on. We all still feel the need to give back when we receive. It goes beyond being polite. It's a deep-rooted feeling for balance. This is the power of reciprocity, which is the first principle in the book, Influence. And marketers use it all the time to make us feel like we owe them one and buy more of their stuff. Now, the classic example of this is Alex Hormozi's content. It's often hard to even watch his videos because it's like drinking from a fire hydrant. He overwhelms you with free, valuable content. And while the content in his course is so good that most other people would charge thousands of dollars for it, Hormozi gives it away for free on his website. Not because he's an amazing human being, but because he knows that it'll trigger the law of reciprocity in you and me and make us feel more compelled to buy from him in the future. You almost feel dirty going through it all free. It's that good. But as Alex says, you want to make your free stuff as valuable as possible so that your audience actually think to themselves, man, if this is his free stuff, imagine what his paid stuff is like. And often they'll even reach out to you in private asking to pay you money because they feel like they owe you one. So how do you use the law of reciprocity for yourself? Well, creating free content is a great start, but the number one trick that all top marketers use is to give away free value in the form of a lead magnet. This could be a webinar, an ebook, a course, or even a weekly newsletter. And speaking of lead magnets, if you want to see me break down the world's top performing sales funnels for free, then you can join my weekly newsletter down below. I promise it's so good you'll feel like you owe me one. Link is in the description. Which takes us into persuasion principle number 2. And by using this trick, you can 10x your average order value. It's that good. So, Cialdini shares a fascinating experiment that perfectly illustrates this tactic's effectiveness. The story begins in a quiet neighborhood where researchers embarked on a unique request. Now, initially, they approached homeowners with a big ask to place a large, obstructive "Drive carefully" sign on their lawns. And as you might expect, not many were very keen on this idea. Actually, majority refused, citing the sign's size and the impact on the yard's appearance. I mean, Who wants a big, ugly sign jammed into their perfectly manicured lawn? But here's where it gets interesting. At the same time, in a similar neighborhood, another group of homeowners were first asked a much smaller favor. Would they be willing to display a tiny little sign in their window that promotes safe driving? This request, given its minimal nature, saw a much higher agreement rate. But fast forward a few weeks, and these same homeowners who had agreed to put this little sign in their window were approached again. This time, they were asked if they would now put this big, ugly, much larger drive carefully sign in their yards. Remarkably, a significant number of them actually agreed to this bigger request. In fact, 76% of people who first put this little sign in their window agreed to also display the larger sign, compared to only 17% of homeowners who were asked to put the large sign without that first initial request. What flipped the switch? Well, it boiled down to the second principle of persuasion that Cialdini calls commitment and consistency. He explains that once we make a choice or take a stand, we will encounter personal and interpersonal pressures to behave consistently with that commitment. Oftentimes to just save face, even if it's to our detriment. So once these homeowners started seeing themselves as people who cared about safe driving because they agreed to that little sign, it was much easier for them to commit and justify the larger sign jammed into their yard. And top marketers have been exploiting this psychological trick for years. If we look at a famous marketer like Russell Brunson, for example, one of his most profitable sales funnels is the free book sales funnel. And while he sucks you in with the free book offer, he says that typically he makes about $40 for every person that goes through it. How is this possible? Well, right before you order the free book, you're shown an order bump. For just $37, you can get the audio book along with some other bonuses. And since you already entered your credit card details for the book, the friction has been removed. You already made one purchase, why not a second? But it doesn't stop there. Once you've ordered the free book and the order bump, you're now shown an upsell for his one funnel away challenge for $200. And he'll sell you his software ClickFunnels for another $100 a month. He'll sell you his high-ticket products, and before you know it, you've gone from ordering a free book to spending close to $3,000. But how can you implement this strategy in your business? A powerful way to do this is with a quiz funnel. This is a clever way to engage your audience right from the beginning. By having them take a quiz, you're getting them to make a small commitment. And as they progress through the quiz, you're subtly encouraging them to identify as the type of person who experiences this problem. And the logical next step is to solve the problem with your offer in an almost hypnotic state. Moving on to the third principle of persuasion, social proof, which is so powerful it can drive good, ordinary, law-abiding citizens like you to commit crimes. Don't believe me? Cialdini shares a story about random spikes of car theft committed all over the US that didn't seem to make any sense until they found it was only in areas where the movie Gone in 60 Seconds was released. A movie with Nicolas Cage and Angelina Jolie about a bunch of cool thieves stealing cars. But it gets even crazier. Cialdini even shares studies showing that whenever there is wide coverage of people unaliving themselves, the cases of people also unaliving themselves skyrockets, proving that the principle of social proof influences us on a deep level, often beyond our conscious awareness, and is therefore one of the biggest influences on our purchasing decisions. Just think about the last time you bought something from Amazon. How often have you found yourself choosing one product over another simply because it has more positive social proof or reviews? Amazon reviews have become the single biggest factor behind purchases for many of us. And when you take a look at some of the world's best brands and the ads that perform the best, a lot of the time you'll find that they just have the best success by running social proof ads, where it looks like a real person sharing their experience with the product and how it worked for them. And these convert like crazy. So how can you use social proof to make more money? Well, if you're selling a product or a service, you need to reach out to your customers and ask them for a review or a testimonial. And if you don't have customers yet, go stand on the street corner and ask people to try your product and just record their reaction. The brand High Smile are masters at this, and their ads crush it. Some of their best ads are just approaching what looks like strangers on the street and asking them to try their toothpaste or teeth whitening, and they record their reaction. So, in the book, Cialdini tells a story about Joe Girard, a man hailed as the world's greatest car salesman by the Guinness Book of World Records. Now you might wonder, how did Joe do this? Was he selling cars with some revolutionary features? Were his prices the cheapest in the nation? Well, no. Joe's secret weapon was the ability to make everyone feel like a friend, like someone you've known your whole life and can fully trust. And every month, whether you bought a car from him or not, you get a card in the mail from Joe saying, "I like you." Just that. No sales pitch, no pressure, just the words, "I like you." A genuine gesture to say, "You matter." This wasn't just being friendly, it was Joe applying the fourth principle of persuasion, liking. People don't just come back to buy another car from Joe because he's a good salesman. They come back because they liked him. They trusted him. And someone who embodies this principle brilliantly is CBum, Christopher Bumstead, Mr. Olympia himself. He has been able to take his likable personality and turn it into a media empire, with businesses worth millions, all on the back of his likable personality and vulnerable stories. He shares his journey, the ups, the downs, and the successes, and importantly, the failures. In fact, Cialdini shares that sharing your failures and your vulnerability are the things that often lead to the highest liking, not a highly polished Instagram Miami lifestyle. But how can you implement this strategy for yourself? It's simple. Create content and be authentic. Be real. Share stories not just about your product or service, but about you. Let people in. And the more they know you, the more they'll like you. And the more they like you, the more they'll buy your products and services. Dale Carnegie said it best in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. People buy from those that they like and trust. So if you want to sell more of your stuff, be more likable and trustworthy. And it starts by being real, which is genuinely something that I struggled with for years. Always wanting to post content, make videos, but being held back by wanting to put the real me out online for others to see, and letting the fear of judgment hold me back. But coming to the realization that no one really cares as much as you think. So, if I can do it, so can you. Taking us into principle number 5, and as I delved deeper into the book, something else struck me. It seemed as if the persuasion principles I had explored didn't stack up against something far more powerful. And it's one of those dangerously scary principles I mentioned earlier that should make this book illegal. One that the government uses on us to ensure we are good little citizens. Cialdini conducted an alarming experiment where individuals were assigned roles of teachers and students. The purpose? To examine the impact of punishment on learning. So, in one room sat the teachers, and in another room sat the students. And whenever a student answered incorrectly, the teacher was instructed to administer an electric shock from a button that would slowly get more and more painful and severe. The purpose of this experiment was to see if normal, good people could be influenced into giving lethal electric shocks to the people they'd never met in another room, just because they were told to do so by an authority figure. And alarmingly, 65% of the teachers escalated the shocks to the very highest level, despite the agonizing protests and discomfort of the students coming from the next room. Thankfully, though, no real shocks were actually given. The students in the other room were all just actors, and the screams were just recordings. However, the teachers believed the scenario was real. And it showed that given pressure by an authority, most people are willing to commit horrible things, showing the power of the fifth principle of persuasion, authority. It's in our nature to comply with authority figures, believing that they possess greater knowledge or insight. And this is frequently used in marketing. You'll even find con men wearing fancy suits, reflective vests, or cop uniforms, because it triggers compliance in our brains that we almost cannot control. There are countless examples in history where doctors recommended Camel cigarettes, or even ads which featured actors pretending to be doctors promoting products. And these campaigns made millions. Why? Because people can't help themselves when faced with what appears to be an authoritative endorsement. So let's look at a modern example of this being used very, very cleverly. Pet Lab Co. features veterinarians endorsing their products. Duradry uses dermatologists to recommend their deodorant for excessive sweating, and there's High Smile, which doesn't even use real authorities, it just puts their actors in white lab coats. So how can you use this in your own marketing? Well, one way you can do this is by finding somebody in your industry that has already built authority and see if they'll endorse your product. Or you can take a page out of High Smile's book and use visual cues to subtly imply that the actor is an authority by donning them in the authority's uniform. Everyone wants what they can't have. And Cialdini showcases this when he talks about the cookie jar experiment in his book. So there are two cookie jars placed side by side. One jar is nearly full, containing 10 cookies, while the other jar just has 2 cookies left. Participants in the experiment were asked to choose which jar they prefer to take a cookie from, and intuitively you might think that the jar full of cookies is more appealing, offering a greater abundance of choice. However, the findings of the experiment reveal a different aspect of human desire. The majority of participants chose the jar with only 2 cookies. Why? Because of the sixth principle of influence, scarcity. The idea is simple. If it's limited, it's probably more valuable than I think, therefore I need to act now before it's gone. And this actually happened to me recently when I was planning a weekend getaway. I was sitting on the couch one evening, scrolling through booking.com on my phone, just looking at possible places to maybe stay. Then I saw it, an amazing deal for a hotel room, but there was a catch. The website said that there was only one room left at this discounted price. Now, I wasn't planning on booking the room right away, but this changed everything. The fear of missing out kicked in really hard. So I rushed to my credit card and booked a room then and there, even though I was just window shopping a few minutes earlier. It was the scarcity that made me act so fast. And here is how you can do the same for your offer, without those fake as hell countdown timers you see that never reach zero on every marketer's website. Include special bonuses with your product or service and offer them at a discounted price, but only make this exclusively available to the first 1,000 customers or 100 or whatever. And you can also inject a little bit of urgency by setting a deadline. Make it a limited time offer that expires on a specific date, as long as it's genuine. People aren't as stupid as you think they are, and they can smell through this BS a mile away. Which takes us to the last persuasion principle, unity. And this one is simple but powerful. When we feel we're part of a group, we're more likely to be influenced by it because we see its members as one of us. This means we're more inclined to help, support, and agree with those that share a common identity or bond with us. And this is how you build a cult-like following. If we go back to Russell Brunson and his software ClickFunnels, Brunson didn't just build a software platform, he fostered a community known affectionately as funnel hackers. Brunson shares stories about people who actually pay the $100 a month for ClickFunnels even though they don't use it, just to feel like they're part of a community. They may not be ready to launch their funnel today, but being a funnel hacker gives them a sense of identity and belonging. And they proudly wear their funnel hacking shirts. It's a badge of unity. And the seventh key principle of persuasion in Cialdini's book. This transforms customers into fans, like the fanatical screaming fans of Justin Bieber calling themselves the Beliebers, or the Apple fanboys that queue for days for the latest iPhone release. It's all because of unity. So how can you use this principle of unity for your business? Start by identifying the why, the core of your brand. And Simon Sinek has a great book about this called Start With Why, where he suggests that brands that can communicate a powerful why build these cult-like followings. Ask yourself what brings your customers together as a community. It could be a shared goal, a passion, or a challenge, and once identified, engage with this community. Host events, participate in social conversations, and like Brunson, make your brand synonymous with a movement bigger than just you or your product. So with these 7 principles, you should now be equipped with the dark arts of persuasion. But if you're like most people, often the problem isn't that you don't know what to do, but you just can't seem to do what you know is required. And the reason is simple. You can't focus on work longer than 10 seconds without getting bored. You can't even sit in front of the TV without your laptop open and phone in your hand, doom scrolling, because you need constant stimulation. And if this sounds like you, you will never be successful unless you learn to focus. And if you want to learn the 4 weird ways to help you hyper-focus and get more done in a week than most people get done in a month, then click the video on the screen right now.